people feel connected when they follow you on Instagram, they're on your email list and they're listening to your private podcast. They like feel you in every corner of their life in a non-creepy way.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast. Today, we're doing a case study with Brittany Roberts, and she is the founder of Social Brittify. Brittany, I'm so excited to hear about this. She is going to basically break down how she had a 17 plus, looks like, figure launch. 17 figure. I don't even know what that number could be. That would be amazing. I don't think you'd be on the phone with me if that was true.
Whoa.
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 $17,000 launch. But how she used that to basically launch a new program of hers. So, Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And just to cool everyone's expectations, no, it wasn't a 17-figure launch. Maybe that might be when I come back to the next episode.
Sure. We'll chalk it up to we'll have you on the show for sure.
Yeah.
I'm like literally sitting here being like, what even is 17 figures? Like, that's just
I know,
like,
it's scary,
okay.
But it's the goals are big and I'm
the
all
next
for it.
goal. Yeah, that's going to be your advert, the next marketing angle that you do, because no one's done that one before. So, Brittany, why don't you share a little bit about your business, what you sell, and who you sell it to, and so that we can really position this launch.
Sure. So my background when I first started my business was in social media management. So I was doing done-for-you services. I was in, the true like driver's seat behind the scenes, social media managers do like 42 different roles in one. And it was certainly in the heyday of that 2020, 2021 time where it was just all happening. And I really started to learn and discover a lot about the types of businesses that I personally really enjoyed working with and the types of strategies that I enjoyed planning and executing on, and same with the type of content too. So I started to really refine things down and started to lean more into working with a lot of course creators and experts and consultants, as I really enjoyed the personal brand side of that. And something that I had struggled to kind of nail was, as the social media manager, the person running their content or creating their content, running their socials, how can I get these people involved as much as possible? Because most of the time, someone offloading their socials means peace out. I want absolutely nothing to do with this. So I was really trying to find clients that were like, I want your help, but I want to be involved. Because I was a really big advocate for, this isn't just something. If you're the expert behind your business, it's your IP, it's your knowledge. You need to be, fueling your content. So I started to really find out who I wanted to work with. I started working with more business coaches, course creators, experts. Initially, I was working in the beauty industry massively, which was a great time when, everyone was getting their eyebrows laminated and their eyelashes done. But I was like, hey, just that's forever. And as I was starting to work with these, course creators, coaches, I was like, oh, this is a whole new world really for me. And it opened up my eyes. And I was starting to kind of have that snowball effect of clients as well. And I really couldn't facilitate that many people. So I was getting asked, you should create a course. You should do all these things. And I was like, well, I've been behind the wheel of so many course launches and, different strategies. And I was like, I feel like I now kind of know what I would need to do to move into that for myself. So I made that very natural transition. I started with my own course. That course turned into a membership. That membership is still going today. But now, again, kind of just always evolving in this Instagram space, because that's really where my wheelhouse is. I've really landed in that pocket of I love helping people to launch, specifically really using their content in a really effective way, because so much has changed in the few years I've been doing this. And it's certainly not the same every year. Everything's always changing. So how can we really smartly and efficiently use our content, specifically the tools on Instagram, to launch and launch well in a really fun way?
Oh, wow. I love that. I also like hearing the journey too, just because there is something about being a business owner and listening to podcasts like this to just kind of see the connections.
Yes.
and yeah, see how people get here and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So that sets us up really well. So private podcast. Let's start there for a second. Where were you like, this makes sense to add to Instagram or to my strategy? And maybe it wasn't the first thing you decided to do, but like, yeah, when did you hear about it? And you're like, okay, that's interesting. I'm curious.
Yeah, it was something I hadn't really been exposed to massively until I opted into someone's private podcast. And I just hadn't really, I actually had a regular, weekly episodic podcast myself. And I kind of always thought, if people wanted to listen to it, they could just go and do that. And I hadn't thought about how kind of creating this exclusivity around kind of like a little mini series, a very specific, 6 or 7 or 8 set of episodes, and how that could really create, again, that exclusivity, but really prime and prep your audience for what you would be launching. So I had at this point done a few various different launches of all different kinds, webinar launches. I'd done Black Friday campaigns. I'd done all the things. And again, I was like just noticing so much in the market and how much harder it is to really capture people's attention and to get them to want to opt into free things, because there's so much free stuff around. People don't need to sign up with their name and email to get great information anymore. It's available everywhere. It's in great content. It's on, Substack. It's on YouTube. So how can you really create something that actually functions as a lead magnet, which is something you really need in a course launch or a program launch of any kind, that really gets them feeling, oh, this is worth my time and energy? Because anytime there's any type of like exchange of like a free resource, yes, it's free, but they need to like read it. Or they need to actually absorb it. And I think we kind of forget about it because like, it's free. Don't you want it? And we're like, yeah, it's free. But if that's like a 97-page ebook, like, I don't know. I'm not reading that. I know I'm not. So I had kind of opted into someone else's private podcast. I had been getting some, resources myself about how to use those strategically. And I was like, I think this is the next like evolution for me, because I have this public podcast, but I want to create something that really works as a lead magnet effectively and really sets up my leads for what I was going to be selling them in the future pipeline of my launch.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. You've sold me. Isn't that funny? No, no, but like all the things that we always say on this show too, I love that because you've seen so many launches, you're probably also like, these are the type of people we tend to attract. I'm going to try something innovative and different and like see what happens, because I want to note too, this was like a beta offer, right? So this is a new offer for you. Yeah. And so I think too, when you think about, testing something out, doing something new, attracting the right people, there's a lot of different things you can do, but sometimes being as like intimate and connected and all of that like really pays off in that type of launch too. So I wanted to kind of allude to that. Okay. So you're into private podcasts. You're like, I feel like this could work. I experienced it myself. I want to give that to my people or something. So why don't we start with the planning of it? And especially since you're a launch educator, we do like to, obviously there's case studies of people that have used private podcasts for launches, but I want you to share like your knowledge and information and as an educator yourself with that type of thing. So let's like focus on that. What did you do when you realized you wanted to add that to your launch strategy?
I wanted it to feel, especially I think this would be important for anyone that also does have an existing regular podcast. I wanted it to feel different and exclusive and almost like a new Netflix drop was going down. And it was going to be the thing that everyone was going to be talking about. And, I wanted it to have this very, almost like a product, but I'm thinking like a Netflix series, because I had this kind of idea around, again, keeping in mind, thinking about now my like linear journey of, I was very much just like broadly Instagram focused. I was much like, I'd talk about anything to do with Instagram, content, selling, growth, like call to actions. I was kind of really broad, and I actually really wanted to refine it down and be known, yes, in the Instagram space, but specifically for launching. So I wanted to create this really special series that felt exclusive. It felt limited edition. it also felt really thematic and fun because that's something I love to teach in my launches as well. Because something I love to do is just create that moment that everyone's like, oh my God, she's launching. It's this fun thing. I want to be a part of it. I don't want to miss it. It's really topical. It's really conversational. And that's really what I wanted to use that private podcast for. So I'm someone who I'm very strategic, but it probably usually starts with the creative element more than anything. And then I'm like, okay, backtrack. How do I make this connect strategically? So the initial theme I had was, can we be honest about launching? And it was just going to be this me almost confessing, ranting in a way about the current kind of market and trends that I was noticing when it came to live launching, how we were either using or misusing Instagram and our content in that space as well. And the theme that came out of it was this confessional style, me literally, all I could envision was me in a confessional booth in a church. And I was pitching.
I thought you were going to go Love Island or something, but I get that too.
Okay, there's another idea. There's another idea someone can totally take, because that's a good one too. But no, I was kind of thinking a little bit darker. And I was pitching this to people. I was like, A, is this appropriate? B, how am I going to make this work? But that's kind of where the theme of the podcast title, the energy of, the intro, the way the episodes were structured in this, I confess something, whether that's a confession of something I observe or a confession of my own experience in launching. And then that would kind of be what the episode ended up being about what needed to change, what needed to be different, what we could do differently. So the theme around it was really what kind of started it. And then that's where, again, how the content strategy comes from it as well. How do we promote this? How do we make this something that doesn't just feel like, more regular podcast episodes from me, feels really limited edition and special, but as well really helps to position my audience for what I was going to be kind of niching down into, essentially. I was kind of taking my broader audience and be like, the people this applies to, this is the journey that I want you to come on with me. I want to, kind of indoctrinate you into this new angle that I'm focusing on, to really make sure that when I came up with this offer, which wasn't as broad as what I had been doing, which wasn't as broad as my other offers, I really had the right people in the room, essentially, to be selling to.
That makes sense. I'm totally the same as you, the total creative. I go there first and then I'm like, okay, how do we make this work? Usually someone on my team has to rein it in a little bit. So that's very fun. And I think too, when you are, doing a launch about launching, there's also that other layer too, where you're thinking about, okay, everyone's going to be watching exactly how I do this. And then, that can also bring in a lot of cash because people are like, oh, great. And it also could be really bad. So I get how, the theming of it and coming up with that thing that really makes people want to sign up. And I think you kind of alluded to that earlier, where you're just how do I make this feel exclusive and for the right people? And I don't know if people drive this home enough when they're planning their launch, but that's really how you can increase conversions. And it's not necessarily right about how many people sign up for the thing, but how many people sign up for the thing that are actually supposed to be signing up for the thing because they actually want potentially what's at the end. Okay. So what was the offer? What was the course?
So it was the very beta round of my new program. Well, it's not new now. This was a few months ago. It's the Instagram Launch Lab. So as you were kind of just saying, it was very meta in that I'm launching about launching, and I'm launching using the strategies that I teach you. So it was very much if you like this, obviously if I'm selling to you and it works, there must be something here. So I really kind of played into that, a lot. I wasn't trying to pretend, because I think it's such an interesting observational thing for people. And there's so many different ways to launch, and everyone approaches it differently. Everyone has different energy. And I think we find the people that we want to work with when we kind of get to experience being a part of their ecosystem. That's how I find the mentors and people I love to work with. So I want to create that experience where they could get to know what it was like to work with me, get to see my strategies in action. So there were so many moments this is what I'm teaching, and this is what you're experiencing, and I'm talking about you as the buyer, and I'm also talking about you as the, so many things. But the flow on of how I kind of then transitioned, again, these leads that had gone through that that private podcast funnel was to then take them through an additional training again to really step them through the strategies and frameworks that were inside the program. I was only looking for a small handful of people. This wasn't like the goal of this campaign wasn't biggest launch ever, as many students as possible. That came later when the program had a little bit more shaping to it. But the goal of this was really to test messaging, experiment with different mechanisms that I hadn't really yet experienced, to again be able to feed that back to people who were going to be inside the program. And that second mechanism that I was playing around with after the private podcast was using my close friends' stories on Instagram. And really, again, leaning into, in the same way that the private podcast had this function, leaning into that exclusivity and like almost like private bonus content that was only accessible if you were in the right place at the right time. And that just, again, playing into that exclusivity, and I can't think of another word today except for exclusivity. I'm sure that one will come to me in a moment. But yeah, just having this like very private, special VIP essence to this launch, I feel like elevated not only the experience for these potential clients, but it really just gave them this experience to working with me, which then when they actually were my clients, we just had this much more intimate, like close rapport, which is different to when you're on a webinar with like 1,000 people, you know, if you can compare the two.
100%. Okay, that's interesting. I don't even think sometimes I'm like, oh, I know where they're going with this, but that I was like, oh yeah, I that totally tracks. Okay, so there's pieces here that I want to tease out. I want to tease out what you decided to put in the private podcast and anything you learned about the way you structured the private podcast that you want to share. And then I definitely want to get a little bit deeper into the strategy of the friends list and then also talk about the results of this. So let's start with the private podcast structure. We've talked a lot about this on different show, and, you know, this isn't anything prescriptive. You're not going to be like, you know, this is how I, you know, created this podcast and this is why it converts, but more just like, is there anything you learned from running it or commentary from people who went through it that you think would be relevant to people listening who might want to use a private podcast as kind of a warm-up strategy?
I definitely think shorter, bingeable is better because, again, the purpose of a private podcast in this situation is to really feed them information, help them to shift their beliefs and understand and really get them primed for what you have to offer. So this isn't the time for like the hour and a half long episodes if you want them to progress through your mini series. And that's kind of the way that I structured it, was like 6 episodes. Every one kind of was like the stepping stone to the next. You got that piece of information. Oh, now I need this. So I need to listen to the next episode, because I was trying to get them towards the end of every single episode, because at the end is when I want them to move on to that next step, which is if they want to learn more about this framework, this strategy, here's this exclusive opportunity to join my close friends. So, and I think I could even, like, looking back on it now, I could even tie it up further. So just making sure that they really felt like something they could binge. And I was definitely using this in my positioning with my content as well. Like, binge it on your way to Pilates class, like just 1 episode every morning for the week. You'll have, you know, all of this at the end. You'll have, you know, this base of knowledge which is going to help you to XYZ. So being really clear on like, what's it worth of your time to listen to this? Because again, if you compare it to like a more traditional lead magnet, like an ebook or a training, they want to get something out of it because it's still their time. Even if it is short episodes, it's still their time. They could be listening to their favorite true crime podcast. They could be listening to, you know, whatever else they want to listen to. So why this private podcast? Why these episodes? So it's really clear important to me that I had very clear episode topics that felt there was something that they get out of it every single time, and that it led them to each next one every time. Because naturally there's going to be drop off from your first episode. Maybe it's just because they forget to come back to it. So it's really thinking about how do we get them invested and wanting to keep listening all the way through.
What were the strategies you used for that? Something that was happening in Instagram? Because we kind of talk a lot about, you know, seeding it in emails, and we think that like a private podcast is awesome, and we'll talk about how great it is. Like the podcast player is an inbox. and like you should use the other things, like really create that kind of surround sound experience. So did you couple it with anything to help them get through?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely integrated specifically a lot into Instagram. I had a big warm-up strategy essentially before it even launched. So I was seeding a lot of, again, these themes, these elements. I had like a confession box, so people were submitting their confessions.
Fun.
It was all like, again, like if you think a lot of where the campaign things came from was the secret lives of Mormon wives. One of the wives, she has this confessional theme on a Sunday, and we were just like playing into some of the like topical like pop culture things that are happening, and how can we recreate that and make, because essentially like what I'm talking about is business and strategy. It's not that it's boring, but how can we make this feel different to the way everyone else is talking about it? So definitely a warm-up strategy to the release of the private podcast was really important. And then I didn't drip the episodes because I wanted to make sure that if they wanted to binge it, they absolutely could. But making sure that there was this very much like showcasing of each episode and featuring the topic and diving into it even deeper through my content. So they're like, oh, I need to listen to that episode. No, I haven't listened to episode 2 yet. I need to go listen to that episode. So there was definitely, because my audience was and is primarily on Instagram. Yes, I used email, but I really wanted to create this big ecosystem of excitement and exclusivity. And like, now's the time, it's going to disappear. Everyone's binging it. I need to binge it too. That kind of feeling when, the new season or whatever comes out on Netflix. So yeah, it's a lot of like pre-hype and then hype in the moment. So people feel connected when they follow you on Instagram, they're on your email list, and they're listening to your private podcast. They like feel you in every corner of their life in a non-creepy way.
Not creepy at all. I totally, right? Very cool. I love this. So yeah, that pre-strategy of getting people excited to give their confessions was now, oh my gosh, were you featuring some of the confessions, or did you answer them? Were they maybe thinking that their confession would show up on the show or the series?
The way I had to schedule my time and just for the sense of production and everything, I didn't do their confessions in the episodes. Looking back, and if I had a little bit more like time up my sleeve, just the way scheduling worked would have been so fun and a really cool idea. But it was more about the pre-launch strategy. So the episodes were more about my confessions and me revealing
which it still has intrigue, right? Yeah, because
totally.
it's like, what's she gonna say? And I have a confession. Like, what is she gonna say? Yeah, okay.
So the pre-launch strategy was about their confessions, and instead of like making them like submit it just like publicly, we had like an anonymous confession box. So it kind of went a little bit rogue. So it was fun because they were sharing their confessions. It got them hyped. I would share my reactions to their confessions, and I was like, I'm gonna reveal all of mine in like this vault of episodes soon. So yeah, there's that kind of like just teasing and playing with your audience and getting them kind of like amped up is really important, because then they go into the private podcast with that like, I need to listen, I need to binge this energy.
So good. Okay, so that is fun. Now everyone's listened to everything, and there is another thing happening. And is this the friends, like the close friends list? Tell me how that integrates in all of this.
Yeah. So anyone who kind of, I guess, came through this journey was then invited onto this training series, which I was hosting on Close Friends. And again, similar to other different types of launch strategies I tried, I've done the 3-day challenges on Zoom. I've done, the Facebook group challenges. I've done these like multi-day events before. And in 2022, highest converting launches I've ever had. On the other hand, most work I've ever had to do to achieve that, right? So it's kind of like, okay, how can I emulate elements that worked from that? I don't think people are going to be able or going to want to be on Zoom 3 days in a row for an hour like we used to. But there is that element of getting people involved and taking them through a workshop style experience and giving them a taste of your frameworks and giving them the beginning steps. So it's like, okay, let's keep the structure, but let's change the delivery format. So instead of Zoom, I was going to be hosting it on my close friends story. So essentially, no Canvas slides, Instagram stories, but they're only accessible if you're added to my close friends segment. So it was promoted very similarly to a 3-day challenge. I was referring to it as a training series, but essentially when they would opt in, instead of like grabbing their email, I would just add them to my close friends list. And a lot of like the same tactics in terms of how I, promoted it. And it was 3 days. It was going to be expiring. It wasn't available forever. Were the same. It just felt really intimate. And again, it was like there's like two parallels. Like there's like all my front facing content on my feed and my regular stories. But then if you were on my close friends, you will like see all of this additional bonus content, which was, quite like high level coaching and strategy that they were getting access to across those 3 days. And that was what planted the seeds then when I officially opened the opportunity up to apply for that program.
Oh, this is interesting. So, okay, were the opt-in or the invite to join the close friends list didn't happen till the bingeable series was over, or was it both? Like, were they both happening at the same time? Yeah. And then I'm thinking about just like your call to actions, like on your posts and stuff like that.
So it was tagged on to the end of the final episode of the podcast. But keeping in mind, not everyone opts into everything. And I didn't want it to be like, if you didn't download the podcast or you missed episode 6, that you missed this whole thing. So that was kind of like the secret VIP invite, pre-invite almost, because it was still a little while saying I had the private podcast be out there for a little while before I hosted the training series. So once the private podcast really had its moment and that was the big talkable, content strategy going on, I then announced the next activation, which was this training series, which I tie it into, like, if you love the private podcast, you're going to love this training series. This is where we get into the action. This is where we map things out. We go against everything that we were saying that is wrong in the private podcast, and we talk about how to now do it right in this day and age, in this market. So if you're like, yes, I agree with everything. Now I want the action plan. This is where you want to be. So there was a flow-on effect of those who would come through the private podcast, but also people who were just seeing that for the first time and more interested in that. And it was very much like promoting your webinar. It was, here's the dates. It wasn't really a specific time, which made it great because anyone could access it over 24 hours.
And they're already there probably, like showing up to that platform. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like if you're already watching my stories, you can see this. And I did use some simple ManyChat automations. I didn't, at the time I did it, I didn't have like an opt-in page. So I was just doing it all through my DMs, using the engagement stickers on stories as well. I'll just tap the sticker if you want me to add you. So you didn't even have to comment or send me a message. It was as really lo-fi as possible, because I think people are in that phase of I want to join, but I don't want anyone to know. And I want to, I want to sign up to that, but I can't be bothered to fill out the form. So I was trying to make it as easy and reduce all of that friction, reduce all of those things that we know now are kind of issues at the moment with, opt-in rates and conversion rates, simply because we're all just kind of lazy and tired and over it. So this was really keeping the structure of the strategy there, but making it as chill as possible for everyone to join, for everyone to be there. And delivering a cool experience, but in a way anyone could watch it from their couch or, while they were cooking dinner at night, they just let it play on their phone.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm even just imagining. So, okay, what's cool about this is the urgency is there, right? Which was there with the private podcast series. So the teaching for a single day is 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
Is that how stories work? Okay. Were they mainly talking heads? You just turned it on, let Instagram record you, and how many did you do? I'm just even just imagining that. And look, this is me who hasn't done this on Instagram and doesn't use it totally like that. But so that's interesting.
Yeah, great questions to ask, because these are the questions. This was me. I had mentally envisioned this strategy, but I had even started chatting to clients about it. I was like, this is how it can work, because I had used my close friends in the past for market research. And when I was wanting to do some type of VIP offer, I had done kind of a waitlisty version of this, but I had used it in this very structured approach when there was 3 days of training. I was very clear on what the topics were. It was a bit more structured. So like I'm kind of figuring this out as I go. So I decided to, obviously I had topics planned that I actually decided to make all of my notes in advance. So I wasn't waking up on the Tuesday of the first day and being like, what am I going to talk about? I had actually used ChatGPT. It was very helpful to be like, okay, these are all of my teaching points and notes. I'm going to be delivering this on Instagram stories. Can you break it down for me, like slide by slide? What should I put? And suggestions for, should this be me talking to the camera, or should this be me with like the green screen behind me and I'm pointing at things? Or should this one be just a static image and the text so that they can easily just hold down to read that? And I also, as I was building up this close friends list, I was asking the people joining. I was like, would you prefer that it's all face to camera and you can just listen? Or would you prefer it's static and you can read it in your own time? And the third option was a mixture of both. And the most popular vote ended up being the mixture of both. So I just played around with the formats and I was trying to make it engaging and fun and different. And it wasn't that you just had to sit there and listen to me talk the whole time. There were these kind of different visual elements and different mediums essentially to learn. So I had, some more graphic style things where I was drawing things like pie charts. And, I had all these different visual things that, again, made it engaging and interesting as well. So it wasn't just this huge long me talking for 20 slides, but it ended up being around 20 slides each day. So it wasn't going crazy. So you could overdo it. Because again, thinking about keeping people engaged all the way through, not just to the end of each day, but the end of the third day was really important. So I had to be careful and really think about how can I keep them engaged every day.
I love that because totally. As I was thinking about this, it's like, oh, what's cool about this, if I'm somebody who wants to opt into this or do it, you can't just go on tangents for an hour or whatever. Like because of the format. And so it's almost like you knew what you were getting into. Okay. So if there were roughly 20 slides each, like how much content is that? How long does that run in a day on Instagram?
If you had to let it play, maybe it would have ended up being around 15 minutes. Between the talking slides, which probably ended up being maybe 60 or 70% of the day. And then each day's set. And then there would be a mixture of just the static ones.
The slides.
Yeah, if you could just if you just opened up my stories and let it play, maybe it was about 15 minutes, maybe even slightly less. So the goal of it was that it was quick and easy to absorb, and you could just you had basically 24 hours to watch it and catch up on it within each period. And that was another thing I was playing into was this is on stories. The nature of stories is that they disappear. Yep. There is no recording. There is no replay. Something again I had to navigate was I got questions of, I missed day 2 because I didn't, I didn't see the stories that day. So again, me being in experimenting mode, I was just like, okay, well, how do I navigate this? I'm going to save them all anyway because I ended up saving all of these stories. They're now in my curriculum as part of the full example in my strategy that I teach. But I was like, okay, well, if someone's reaching out to me and they're like, I really want to miss day 2. I love day 1. I want to see day 2. I'm happy to send them the Google Drive link of the slides if they really want to get access to that. So you can totally decide, I marketed it as no replay, but I think if someone's reaching out to you and they want to see them, I'm happy to send them to them. So yeah, just play around with it and seeing what questions would come up. And it was just amazing, the reaction. People were like, oh my God, this is so great. I just let it play while I was cooking breakfast or whatever it was. And just how everyone was watching it at different times. It was very unique.
Yeah, really cool. And I bet this did a lot for your engagement too. So as you're thinking about it, right, it feeds into the whole ecosystem because if you took them to the webinar or whatever, Instagram doesn't know that. And so you would have to go and create other content there and then whatever. So, okay, this is really fun. So then what does the pitch look like? Is that day 3? It's worked into day 3 content, or was it actually something separate?
It was worked into the end of day 3. I had planted the seeds, and I was talking about this is part of something I'm working on. As this was still very much a beta program, I wanted this to be workshop style. You're seeing part of the building process. You're seeing it all come to life. And because again, it was very meta, launching about launching. these people were interested in seeing this play out.
The mechanics,
yeah, like, what is she doing? So it was kind of cool to let them explore it and experience it. So I did kind of talk about how there would be an opportunity at the end of day 3. I was also using some, more traditional strategies about, get to the end of each day, answer the pop quiz question, go into the draw to win something, because I did want people, getting through the content and understanding it and learning about it. So I was making sure people were getting to the end of each day. Yes, people were already coming into my DMs, just responding or answering questions. So the engagement was like amazing. I knew who was there. Like, I think what's interesting about a webinar is, people sign up and they sign up with a random email and you can't like track back to who it was. And especially in my space, your Instagram account, like who you are on Instagram is very important. So I'm trying to find leads and match everything up. But I knew who exactly was there. I knew who was paying attention. I knew who was watching to the end, everything. I knew who was interested, asking questions. And it just ended up very naturally evolving into, well, if you loved the beginnings of this, it was very much workshop style. So they were actually kind of working on things throughout. If you've got the beginnings of your campaign now and you've watched this and you're like, yes, I'd love to do it this unique way. I don't want to do another Zoom webinar. Here's the chance. And I then opened up applications, was clear about the fact that it was limited spots, and I was doing it all through my DMs. I didn't have a sales page or anything at that point, or a checkout. I never did a checkout page. I was sending Stripe invoices.
Yep. Oh my God, I love it. I love a good beta launch. So, okay, can we talk some numbers here? I know you shared the like launch numbers, but like, some of maybe the conversion numbers or whatever you have on hand that makes sense or is relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had about 250 people approximately ended up on my close friends stories.
Nice.
Which I was pretty happy with that. I at this point, again, because it was the first time I'd ever done it, I wasn't like thinking, oh, do I run ads to my close friend stories? I hadn't really thought about that. And again, it wasn't really my goal. The goal wasn't biggest, best launch ever. It was like, can I test out this new format? So I was really happy with like 250 organic leads. And what's really interesting about the process of adding people to your close friends is at this stage, you have to do it manually. There's no automation to set up. And I think, keep that in mind if you were ever to experiment with this. There's somewhat of a manual touch to it, but I actually really enjoyed the process of this person's interested. Okay, let me just check out their socials. What's going on for them? Are they the right type of person for me? So it just felt like such an intimate experience where I was getting to know every person in there. And people were also, as I was continuing to market it on my regular stories, like this is, I took a little screenshot of all like the white dots at the top of my stories and what I can see. There was like 30 dots on one day. And I shared this on my regular stories. Like, this is what you're missing out on. So people were joining throughout as well. And that just continued to build. So 250 people on my close friends stories. I had 5 spots that I was wanting to fill. And I think I end up with, about like between like 17 or like 20 or so applications come through. Those were like actual applications that got, actually sent through, but there were still more conversations happening at that point. Some people either weren't the right fit or it wasn't the right time for them, so they didn't end up progressing to that application stage. And I was pretty adamant on still having an application just because of the nature of the program at the stage it was at, making sure the right people were really there. So it just, again, the rapport that I was able to build with my audience, that I've been able to retain and hold on to and leverage in future launches, because I don't just recommend close friends and never using anything else again. I just love to integrate different types of formats of selling with the way I had to run my business and sell my offers. But it really had this like flow on effect of trust and engagement and community, and just a really fun experience to deliver to them for free. And off the back of it, I got to, sell out my beta round very easily.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we all live in the dream right there. Really cool. So did you have any comments maybe from the folks that participated in the launch? I'd love to hear obviously about the private podcast, but also generally too, because even the private podcast is one piece of this journey, I would say probably contributed to an overall feeling because, like you mentioned, it is an experience. You created an experience and you chose those pieces intentionally. And I'm sure that there's, I don't know, testimonials, DMs or something like that from people that experienced it.
Yeah. The feedback I definitely got was, oh, this feels so different. And I'm enjoying learning in this way and just in a way that doesn't feel, again, the word experience kept coming up, and it just didn't feel like they were in this traditional webinar funnel. And I still use webinars. I did one recently as well, and I think there's a place for them. But I think it's nice to be able to deliver unique experiences and meet our audience where they're at sometimes, and not be like, come to the Zoom, it's at 11 o'clock, make sure you're there all the time. So they kept kind of just saying like, oh, the private podcast, it was so fun, so different. For me, I think the contrast of the difference between my regular podcast episodes and these private podcast ones, they felt different. They were packaged up differently. They were more bite-sized, which I think was appreciated, because I'm not just like, here's more information, here's 20 hours of content I would love for you to absorb, because I don't have time for that either. So yeah, keeping it bite-sized, keeping it fun, and on theme, which is something I love, that creative side of it. So creating that experience, having that connection through my content, through my emails, through the private podcast was really important. That felt cohesive. And then definitely the feedback from the close friends training series, again, was just like, oh, it's just there. Like I just get to watch this like full coaching session on my stories, and I can watch it on my phone. I can watch it while my kid's playing in the playground. I don't have to be on a laptop, or, I don't have to, it just doesn't feel like everything else has felt for so long. And there was just this different energy. And I felt much more connected to them as well throughout, because I could see who was watching. I could see the messages. I could see the engagement, as opposed to just me being on a Zoom with a whole bunch of people. I don't know their intentions. I don't know what Instagram, or I don't know what email address that is. I don't know where you'd come from. So yeah, it was just a really different experience, I would say, for both me and them.
Yeah. So is there anything that you're going to do? Are you going to do this again? I think maybe is an interesting question. And then anything you learned maybe that you could share where you're like, oh, next time I think I would do X or something like that.
I definitely want to do it again. I find it, again, keeping in mind my audience are trying to be a bit innovative as well with their audiences, their course creators they're launching too. So I do feel like I'm kind of this like guinea pig of experimenting, and I find that really fun with launches. So I would 100% do it again. And I use my close friends still, and in different ways too. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. Like I said, market research is a great one, kind of getting this like focus group. You can use it for like a waitlist early access opportunity for maybe even Black Friday, anything at all. And then there's like the actual training series experience, which I've now led lots of clients through as well, and we've learnt more. We've tested out having opt-in pages, getting their emails at the same time as we collect their Instagram handles. We've found that just causes more friction and loses the point of doing it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot I would change. I kind of probably rinse and repeat a lot of it again. There's not a whole lot I would change, because I think I went into it of like collecting information as I went.
Totally.
So definitely thinking about how you can get them onto your close friends as efficiently as possible as one thing. But then when they're on your close friends, making sure they're seeing that content every day during that, specifically that training series window, but also how you can use then your close friends outside of those periods, that bonus content.
Yeah, because your close friends list is just one list, right? So you don't kick people off. Now I'm thinking about it. You could. Okay. So you could technically, now you're in the insider group of like whatever I do. Is that kind of how people see it now that they're on that list? Okay. So
yeah, I've had clients as well deciding, okay, so I did this launch with my close friends, and this is a decision I'd have to make too. Do I want to now cut that list and start from zero to get a fresh group for, clarity on data and numbers and all those sorts of things. So those are some things we're kind of looking at now and experimenting with. I've had someone keep the list and sort of do a downsell offer to that close friends. Had someone completely wipe their close friends. They're going to start again. And I think all can really work. It's super interesting. And the good news is I've had no one reach out to me and be like, can you take me off your quiz?
You can self-remove, right? Like you can just go, right?
Okay, I guess you could, but it's nice to kind of not get that like unsubscribe feeling.
Sure.
So it does create a really tight little group of people who are definitely invested in what you're talking about and selling, which is great because usually with Instagram you just don't know. You don't know who's actually caring about what it is that you have to say. So it's a really great way to find who in your audience is interested and warm and engaged.
Yeah, I mean, we find ourselves saying that all the time. It's like almost anything you can't really tell, right? Like whether it's a download number on a public podcast or like, a TikTok view, it's not, you don't know. Cool. Well, this has been so fun. I knew this would be a fun conversation because I could just tell too, just like the way you did it, that you would be able to share with our audience like some fascinating things that are working in Instagram right now. And also just like aligning with the vibe I think that's happening in marketing is just kind of like we're sick of the same old, like what's actually happening. There's a lot of that. And so I'm not surprised that like a confessional, series did really well for you. The final question that I have for you, I think, is do you have another private podcast idea that you're maybe sitting on or wanting to launch after the success of this one?
Not yet, but I think it will hit me in the same way that the confessional style one will. It's always for me around a theme and some creative concept that would be, fun. I've worked with clients now, again, creating their private podcast feeds and what they've done. And we ended up creating a private podcast. She actually is a birth trauma specialist. So she works with mothers who have had difficult pregnancies and planning to have more children and just navigating that difficulty. And she has these amazing clients that have these incredible stories that are deeply personal and how they've navigated that trauma, worked through it and got to the other side and had wonderful pregnancies or maybe even had another difficult pregnancy, but being able to have that strength to work through it. And she's contemplated again. She's like, do I just share these on my, regular content or should I start my own podcast? And I was like, I think if we could create this little special vault of like client stories that are obviously very private and very intimate and special. And we actually turned this whole basically client file that she had into a very special little library of client stories, which can then only be accessed by certain people. So yeah, there's lots of ideas that I love working on with clients, and I'm excited for my own idea to pop up next.
Yeah, totally. I love that. No, we've definitely had other folks come on where it just makes sense for the type of content where like you want it to feel like maybe not everyone in the world could get access to it. Of course, I know there are podcasts probably on birth trauma and everyone is consenting to like sharing, but there's this other side of like, it just feels a little bit more that you want to like hold closer to your heart or hold closer to the heart of like other women potentially that have experienced it. So it's not for everyone. Definitely. When you think about the audience and what the purpose is, that's a popular one too for people. All right. So at the end of the episode, we ask the question that we ask everyone. I don't know if I prepped you for this, so take as long as you need. If you could have a private podcast of your life's musings, what would it be called? I'm putting the person who's like very into like themes and like I am putting her on the spot.
I have said this to my husband all the time. Like, I just wish like I could have I love my business, but like my like dream business is just like people listening to me talk, like hear about all my opinions on my favorite TV shows and pop culture moments. And I love like pop culture and TV and movies. And it's what influences a lot of my launch themes and content because I just love, like one year I did like a whole like Love Actually thing and I was doing like the poster boards outside the door and yes, I just love a good theme. And a lot of it stems from my obsession with pop culture. And like I could do a whole private podcast on like were Ross and Rachel really on a break? And feel like I could go on. And then if anyone wants to listen, could listen. So I think it's just like the opinions that no one needs to hear about about what I think of my favorite TV shows. I'm very passionate about it. I just don't have the outlet yet. So maybe it's something to do with that.
Maybe this is it. Maybe a whole other faceless brand that you could create.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, super fun. When you launch that, let me know. I always love a good pop culture moment myself. But yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on. So thank you for sharing behind the scenes. Where can people find you? I know we mentioned your handle at the beginning, but I'm sure there's some intrigued folks now that they're listening.
Yes. Well, come find me on Instagram at the Social Britify. I have everything linked over there on Instagram. And yeah, I do have my Crowd Podcast feed is still live.
Nice.
So if you want to check that out, it was limited edition, but I was like, I was gonna leave the link there a little bit longer. So it's still there, and yeah, a bunch of other resources as well. And if you're interested in how you can use your close friends, definitely send me a message because I love to chat about all the potential that it has for different people of different audiences and different niches. So yeah, would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for stopping by.
Thanks, Lindsay.